Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm your host, Mac Pritchard. I'm also the founder of Mac's List. It's a job board in the Pacific Northwest that helps you find a fulfilling career. Every Wednesday, I talk to a different expert about the tools you need to get the work you want. Find Your Dream Job is brought to you by Top Resume. Top Resume has helped more than 400,000 professionals land more interviews and get hired faster. Get a free review of your resume today. Go to maxlist.org/topresume. When you interview and hire hundreds of people, you start to see patterns. The best candidates do the same things again and again. Felicia Rivers is here to talk about 3 steps she sees people take in a successful job interview. Felicia is the director of talent at the Tillamook Creamery Association. It's a farmer-owned dairy cooperative headquartered in Tillamook County, Oregon. She has almost 20 years' experience in talent acquisition in several different industries. Felicia joins us today from Portland, Oregon. Felicia, here's where I want to start. As a human resources director, you've hired countless people, and you say there are 3 steps the best applicants take in job interviews. Let's go through them one by one. The first one is you say you got to know what drives you. What do you mean by this, Felicia?
Yes, when you're looking for work, you should understand for yourself, and this is really just for you, the person looking for the role, that you should understand, are you looking for a new title? Is it career advancement? Is it more challenging work? Do you just want to move to a new city? Whatever your driver is, that's okay, but you should understand what that is and then go out and research organizations and industries that will provide you with that.
But why is that important? I mean, isn't a job search kind of like a shopping trip? Aren't you checking out the employers too, Felicia?
Oh, absolutely. I always tell folks the job interview is just as important for you as it is for the employer. We spend more waking hours doing our work than we do spending time with our families. So it's so important to understand what your driver is so that you can find that position and that company that will get you those things that you're looking for that are important to the enrichment in your career.
But what comes first? Is it knowing what your driver is, or is it curiosity about whether a company or a job might be interesting? Because I'm sure there are people out there who know, okay, this is what I care about, and this company provides it. There might be other people who say, well, I'm not sure about this place. Why don't I just send in an application and see what happens?
I think it depends on where you are in your career and what you're trying to do. There are folks that are looking to change their career completely. So you've done one thing for several years and you'd like to explore something new. So that would be the time when it would be really good to be able to check out an organization and see, hey, is this something that I would want to do? So doing some research and finding folks in that organization to be able to do that would be great. There are other folks in their career who know exactly what they want to do. So then they can go to those organizations and find places that will match up with their values and what's important to them.
And for you as a human resource director, when you're talking to a candidate, either on phone or via Zoom call or in the old days, face-to-face, why was it important for you to know, to see that a candidate knew what drove her? Why did that matter to you?
I think it's really important when someone comes to your organization that they understand what they want and how that fits and aligns with what the organization can provide. Also, organizations want to know that you are interested in coming to work for them, not just to get a job.
Do you risk turning off an employer if you talk too much about your own motivation and not about an employer's needs?
I think there is a line. I think it's really important if you can marry the two. So talk about what you're looking for and how what you're looking for can help you be successful and help that organization drive towards their goals.
And Felicia, what about a candidate who doesn't mention the motivation? Why, what drives them and why they want to be at that company? Is that a turnoff for a hiring manager like yourself?
It's not a turnoff, but I typically will ask. I always ask, what interests you in this organization and in this role? So I ask the question.
And do you find sometimes that people don't know the answer?
Sometimes. I take that depending on the level. Sometimes when you're looking at someone who's coming in as an entry level person, they may not know yet. So you have to have grace.
But if you're mid-career, you probably need to reflect on that and have an explanation ready before you walk in the interview room, don't you?
Absolutely.
Now, you have 3 steps here you see successful candidates take in a job interview. The second one is they know which companies offer what drives you. In other words, if you're a candidate, you know what the companies are that offer what drives your motivation. Tell us more about this, Felicia. What does that mean?
So now you know that you are looking for the next level in your career. We'll just use that as an example. And you also know that you would like to work for a particular industry, and you've now narrowed that down to even a few companies. And what you have decided is that those companies will provide you with either the growth or stability that you're looking for, and they're also going to provide you that challenging work. Now that you know those things, you want to do a little more research with that organization. You want to understand what's going on with that company, recent news, products that they sell, things like that, so that when you come into your interview, you are able to speak to how what you bring to the table matches with what that organization is headed towards.
And how does that help a candidate in a job interview when they do that?
It's very impressive to an organization, number one, to know that a candidate has done their research about the organization prior to stepping into that interview. It shows a level of interest just in itself that you've taken the time to go out and look at the products or look at the website. You know what the latest news is. Hey, I noticed you guys are opening up a new store in such and such place. People are impressed by that, but it also shows that you do have an interest in that organization.
And in your experience, what percentage of candidates walk in the door knowing those things?
You know, it depends on the level. So as you get higher in the level of role, so manager, director, and above, that is probably 70 to 80% of the folks that have that. So you can see there's still a gap where folks do show up and they don't have that information.
And the people who know those answers and have done that research, how much time do you think they've spent preparing, getting clear about that before the interview itself, Felicia?
I have seen, based on how folks answer questions and the questions that they ask us, that people have spent anywhere from 2 to 4 hours researching, because we have people that will go so in depth as to look at folks that they will be interviewing with, look their profiles up on LinkedIn. They have understood their backgrounds, and so they have questions about that. I have people who understand the products, and they've gone out to the marketplace and looked at those products. So there's a wide array of how well folks prepare. And the more you prepare, the better you do in the interview.
Can you ever over-prepare? Have you seen people just bludgeon you with facts and insights in an interview so much that it was actually a turnoff?
Absolutely. You want to know a lot, but you also don't want to come into the interview giving the impression that you know more about the company than the folks you're interviewing with.
And how about curiosity, Felicia? Well, you've got to do your homework. Is it a good thing to ask questions that, particularly for questions, subjects you might not have been able to research before the interview?
Absolutely. I think it's wonderful for a candidate to come in and show a genuine interest. And much like the question you asked me a moment ago, you have to temper, how many questions you ask and what you're asking. But absolutely, it is a great thing when a candidate is asking questions and trying to understand a bit more about that organization.
And again, I come back to the candidates, and I think I understand why people say this. People who are doing a job search, they're curious to know about a company, and they may walk into the interview knowing very little. Is that really a problem? Do you never see successful candidates, the people who get offers? Are there situations where they don't do the research and they still manage to get the job?
That happens. It's rare. And it really, I'll be honest with you, it depends on the personality of the organization that you're interviewing with. And you might ask me, what do I mean by that? There are companies that this is very important to them. I've worked in several industries and I've worked places where the leadership team is pretty disappointed when someone comes in and they don't have that knowledge. And then I've worked for places that are a little more forgiving and they will accept if you have the competencies and you've, shown the requisite amount of motivation that you want to come to that organization. There's some grace given.
Yeah. Well, I want to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about the third step that you see successful candidates take in a job interview. And please stay with us. We'll be back right after this announcement. A resume alone won't get you a job. But if you have a bad resume, you won't get an interview, much less an offer. Find out today how your resume compares to others. Get a free review from Top Resume. Go to maxlist.org/top resume. One of Top Resume's expert writers will tell you what works and doesn't work in your resume. And you can use what you learn to make your resume better before you apply for your next job. Did I mention the Top Resume review is completely free? Go to maxlist.org/top resume. You can also hire Top Resume to do your resume for you. Its writers have helped hundreds of thousands of people get interviews and land jobs faster. Find out today what you can do to make your resume shine. Go to maxlist.org/top resume. Now, let's get back to the show. We're back in the Max List studio. I'm talking with Felicia Rivers. She's the Director of Talent at the Tillamook Creamery Association. It's a farmer-owned dairy cooperative headquartered in Tillamook County, Oregon. Now, Felicia, before the break, we were talking about these three steps you see as a hiring manager, successful candidates taking job interviews. Let's talk about the third one. You say that people who get offers know why this company and why this job. What do you mean here, Felicia?
So when I talk about that, I ask folks, one of the questions I ask people is, tell me what would make this a great next move for you, this organization. And I want to hear from them what they're looking for culturally from an organization, challenge-wise, all of those things. So when you can answer those questions, it really helps the organization to see that you're interested in not only taking on a new role, but you're interested in how you can be a contributing member to that organization meeting its goals.
And what steps do you recommend candidates take before the interview to get clarity about that question? What kind of research can be helpful to an applicant?
I think it's very important for you to read the job description that has been presented to you and really understand how every time you answer a question, you're able to tie your experience back to what the organization is looking for and how you would be successful based on the answers that you give them. I often tell folks, when you are looking for a role, you are in marketing and your product is you. So how will you differentiate yourself from your competition during the interview process?
So let's talk about that research in more detail. Is this about reading the company website? Is it about interviewing people in informational conversations before the interview? What do you see successful candidates do?
I see them do several of those things. Some folks will reach out to people if they know someone in the organization. They will have a conversation with them and ask, what does the organization typically look for when they're hiring? They will ask questions about what is the culture like there. People are very interested in what an organization's culture is. They will ask about stewardship or sustainability. How is your company with that? That's a very important driver for folks today. So people will ask those questions and they want to know those things. So those are their own motivators, but then also asking what the organization looks for. What is a day in the life like at that organization? People want to have those kinds of things answered as well so that they're prepared when they come into their interview.
How specific do you see candidates get in doing this research about particular problems or challenges the company might be facing? Those are good questions about culture, typical day, kind of people who are successful inside an organization. But what about the thorny problems of the job? Because in the end, you and your colleagues are hiring people to solve problems that are keeping you up at night, aren't you?
Absolutely. We get a lot of great questions about that. You'll get one of the best questions that people will ask you is, well, there's two of them. Number one, they might ask you, what does success look like for me if I'm hired for this role? And the other question is just what you said. What is it that keeps you up at night that the person filling this role can assist with?
And I got to ask, Felicia, how often do you have candidates ask you those questions in an interview or ask when you're on an interview panel? Does that come up very often?
I'd say it's becoming more, but probably 30 to 40% of the time. So not that often, but it is pretty impressive when someone does ask that question.
And why is it impressive to you as a hiring manager when somebody asks what keeps you up at night or what does success look like in a year's time?
Because that's an indicator that the person is looking to come to the organization and help move us forward. It also shows that the person is aware that there may be things that keep people up at night and that it isn't all rosy. And one of the things that I always try to tell hiring managers is we want to give folks that are interviewing for a role a realistic preview of the role. So when that question is asked, or even when it isn't, I encourage folks to give that information.
And do you find that hiring managers are pretty frank about the challenges that they're facing in their department or program?
Yes, they are. They're pretty frank. And so sometimes, you also have to say, hey, don't be too down about it. We want to temper that as well.
How does asking that question affect the quality of the conversation? Do you find that it changes the interview and there's a problem or a focus rather on problem solving?
I think it does. If you notice when, back in the old days when we used to sit face to face and talk to each other and you ask someone a question and they lean forward and you can really tell that they're engaged and they're excited about what's happening. A lot of times that's when that is activated, is when someone starts to talk about problem solving. You can see both the hiring manager and the candidate get much more engaged and they're leaning forward and they're talking and they're really, kind of thinking about how do each of them do that, go through the problem solving process. So it's pretty exciting.
We've talked about these 3 steps that you see successful applicants take. How do you think people know how to do this, Felicia? Is this something they arrived at through trial and error? Are they being coached? Is it instinct? What do you think is going on there?
I think there's a lot of coaching that's happening and, the evolution of looking for work continues to change. I mean, in the world today we're in, it has changed again. But I think that every time there's a little bit of a shift in the market, people do a little bit more research. There's folks out there that are willing to give feedback and coaching and counseling to folks to help them understand what will help them be successful. And that's one of the things I like to try to do. So I think that there's a lot of that is happening for folks.
Okay. Well, again, those 3 steps are know what drives you, know which companies offer what drives you, and know why this company and why this job. I got to ask, Felicia, what about unsuccessful interviews? And I ask this in a constructive spirit. When you see a lot of candidates come in and they're well-intentioned, but they do things that ultimately not only jeopardize but their candidacy, but result in them not getting an offer. Are there things that rise to the surface, or say the top 3 common mistakes you might see unsuccessful applicants make?
Yes. Unfortunately, an inability to articulate how their skills translate to the role that we're looking for. Some folks have a real hard time with that. And that does not help them. Unfortunately, when you're meeting someone for an interview, you really only have that time with them to learn who they are and kind of what they can bring to the table. A couple of the other things that folks do is if you're applying for a higher level role and you're just completely unprepared for the interview. So not only have you not done your research, you don't really have good questions that you want to ask. You're not really, you're just really showing that you're not prepared. And the last thing is not showing a true interest in the organization. Those are some of the top three things that are problematic.
Okay. So know how to talk about your skills, do your homework, and be enthusiastic, and maybe not even take the interview if it's not a job you're particularly interested in.
I think that's a really great thing, is to just not even take the interview if you're not interested. It's a waste of your time and the organization's.
Well, terrific. Well, it's been a great conversation, Felicia. Now tell us what's next for you.
Well, I just will continue to provide advice when and where I can to folks looking to change their role or their career. It's one of the things that I enjoy doing and will continue to do so.
Terrific. Well, Felicia, I know people can learn more about you and your work at the Tillamook Creamery Association by visiting your LinkedIn page. I certainly encourage people to mention that they heard you on the show and include an invitation as well if they do connect with you there. Now, Felicia, given all the useful tips you've shared today, what's the one thing you want a listener to remember about the 3 steps you've outlined today to a successful job interview?
The biggest thing I think people should remember is when you're looking for a role, this is just as important to you as it is for the organization that's interviewing you. So really understand what your driver and motivator is, and it's okay. Whatever your driver is, it's your driver, and there's no right or wrong driver, and it's okay.
Find out today what the experts think about your resume. Get it reviewed for free by Top Resume. Go to maxlist.org/top resume. And make sure you never miss an episode of Find Your Dream Job. Sign up for our free podcast newsletter. You'll get information about our guests, links to resources, and a transcript of every show. Go to maxlist.org/show notes. Again, that's maxlist.org/show notes. Next week, our guest will be Corbin C. He's a career advisor at Boyle Welch. It's a recruiting, staffing, and human resources consulting firm. One of the biggest challenges you face as a job seeker is getting clear about what you want in your next position. Corbin and I will talk about how you can answer this question and why it can make your job search easier and faster. I hope you'll join us. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job.